I'm Monica McCarthy with HomeSmart Preferred Realty in Salida, Colorado, and I'm here with Jess Fisher from Peakview Mortgage, a mortgage broker here in Salida, Colorado. And we're going to talk to you a little bit about renting versus buying, some pros and cons, and then get into some numbers about that. So let's start with the pros of renting. So the first one I can think of is just flexibility. You can live that nomadic lifestyle. A lot of people in Chaffee County, Colorado like to come and, snowboard for the winter and leave and work on the river. So you have that nomadic lifestyle flexibility. You also don't have to pay for anything that breaks in the house. So the heater breaks, you can call your landlord. It's not an expense that you have to incur. And for a lot of people, they don't want to have to deal with the maintenance of a home, mowing the lawn, all of that good stuff. So let's see. And then the upfront cost, I think, is another pro to renting. You can, you're not doing a whole down payment for it. You're usually just doing first and last month's rent, maybe a pet deposit. Anything I'm missing there? Pros of...
No, I think too, for people that aren't sure about whether or not they're going to stay in a place, renting can be a really positive avenue.
Yeah.
Or you're trying to figure out maybe where you want to buy. You want to stay in this place. You relocated for a job.
Sure.
So you got some stability, but you're not quite sure. Do I want to be in the middle of town? Do I want to be out in the country? Yeah. That kind of thing gives you time to really get to know the area.
I actually did that when I first moved to Salida. I wasn't quite sure exactly what part of Salida I wanted to be in. So
yeah,
that's another good point. And then home ownership. So on the other side of that token, we have your building equity in a home. You're paying for your own mortgage, not your landlord's mortgage, which is a huge benefit financially for you in the future. There's also significant tax benefits to owning a home. And you want to elaborate on those a little bit, just some of those tax benefits?
Yeah, so I'm definitely not a tax professional, and definitely got to be able to talk to a tax professional.
Talk to your CPA.
But some areas with home ownership that allows you to possibly have some flexibility with your taxes is the property taxes you pay each year, the mortgage interest that you pay each year, if you had to pay any points to buy down the rate or to be able to get in the home.
Okay.
Those points potentially can be written off on taxes. The mortgage insurance. So if you're going conventional, for example, and you don't have 20% down payment, then you're going to have mortgage insurance. And sometimes there's some things you can do tax-wise with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we're going to get into a little bit more of what those numbers are later in the video in terms of mortgage insurance and everything. But yeah, those are definitely, and then you have the stability. You're not dealing with the worry of whether or not your landlord's going to sell that home and you have to be out, and whatever your lease says, sometimes it's 60 days, but it's usually a uncomfortable amount of time to try to scramble and move. So you have that stability of you get to choose when you want to leave your home.
Yeah.
So I think,
and you also get the stability of having a consistent mortgage payment.
Yeah.
Unless, the county will reassess and possibly you got to pay a little bit more property tax. Yeah. But you get that kind of stability of knowing what your rate's going to be for whatever term your mortgage is, typically 30 years.
Yeah, because rents are going up, what did you say, 8%?
8%, nationwide, and, year over year.
Year over year. So, it depends on where you are exactly, but it's likely the rent will continue to go up. So you can't guarantee in 3 years that you're going to have that same rent amount. Or even if you'll be able to stay in that home. So those are kind of the main benefits or pros of renting versus buying. And so you have this happens a lot, somebody's been renting, they're thinking about buying, they're not quite sure. What do you say to somebody in that situation?
Yeah, it's really a discussion at the end of the day. Really some of the questions that I think you would need to answer for yourself are, what are your goals? Do you want to build equity? Or do you want to have that flexibility to be able to come and go, kind of live that nomadic lifestyle like you were talking about? Do you want the stability? Like you said, for example, my brother ended up deciding to buy a house because he was renting a house, and he has 2 kids, and the landlord sold the house. So then he had to go find another place to live. Well, he wanted his kids to have a more stable environment. So he, went ahead and actually bought he rented a house and was kind of going through this decision-making process because it does take some time.
Yeah, it's a big decision.
And he reached out to the landlord for that house and offered to actually buy the house.
Oh, nice.
And so he was able to create that stability for his kids. So homeownership has that. So the other thing is do you want the responsibility if the heater does break up? Do you want to have to mow the lawn, do the landscaping, take care of, all the things that go wrong with a house?
Yeah.
It can be a lot, but a lot of houses, it's really not that much. It kind of just depends on the home itself, how it's been taken care of prior.
And that's something to consider when you're buying the home, but we can talk about that later.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But so that's really helpful. And then so affordability is another huge one for people, especially now with interest rates going up and our prices not plummeting as many people had hoped. So affordability. So what do you say to people who really say, well, I can't afford to buy a home?
That's the reality for a lot of people, especially right now with the home prices being so high, depending on what area you're in, but it's all relative to the area that you're in. So generally speaking, home prices will continue to rise. So if you're not quite sure whether you can afford a home, I think the biggest thing for everybody out there is just to create a budget, figure out what you can actually afford with your current lifestyle. Also, what are you willing to give up? To be able to create that stability, to be able to have that equity. And we'll show some numbers later for them to be able to see what that equity looks like over time. But ultimately, the first step is to create a budget.
Okay.
And then I think the next step is to actually get with a mortgage professional.
Okay.
A mortgage professional will be able to help you see what that reality is. They'll look at all your numbers. You'll have to send in a few documents, but they can give you a really good idea of what you qualify for financially, and then take that reality, that the financial side of it, and find a real estate agent that's able to go show you what that reality looks like. What do those dollars actually allow you to purchase in the given area that you're looking at? Absolutely.
And I always tell my clients, you can qualify for this amount, but you might not want to have a home at your maximum budget. I mean, some people want to have some wiggle room to do other things than just be living in their home. So kind of figuring that out too. But definitely know what you can afford, so you're not looking at riverside properties that are not an option for you. It just helps to know. And that's something that a real estate professional will be able to help you figure out in your area and where you'd be able to reasonably live, and kind of figuring out those pros and cons of areas and things. So that's good to know. So that would be the next step, is talking to a professional, getting your budget, and then just really dialing in on their finances, right?
Yeah, because a lot of what we want isn't necessarily reality.
Sure.
But then I also see some people actually really surprised about what is possible. So for instance, if you look at a VA loan. Okay. I bought my first house for $43 out of pocket.
Wow.
And that's the benefit of, having the VA loan, not having to have a down payment, and having a realtor that really negotiated a really good deal on closing costs and all that stuff. Now, I was really fortunate to get that. Not everybody can, but there is stuff out there, and there's definitely programs out there for folks as well too.
Yeah.
There's, from conventional to VA to FHA to down payment assistance.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things out there that really can help people in the various areas that are a sticking point for home ownership, whether that's upfront cost or month-to-month cost, etc. Because, really, as a country, we have found, generally speaking, that home ownership is a really positive way to build some wealth or some equity, to really be able to help families out and create stability. Yeah. So there's a lot of things out there to be able to help people as well too.
And you bring up a good point with the closing costs. We are seeing that more, particularly with sellers that are wanting to sell their homes quicker, is they're willing to negotiate paying some closing costs for buyers. So that's another avenue that a lot of buyers can take if you feel like you don't have as much money in the bank for that down payment. There's some ways around that as well.
Yeah.
So both on the real estate side and the loan side. So good point. Well, we're going to get into some nitty gritty numbers for you and talk about what it looks like to rent versus buy, and the cost of waiting to buy. If it's something you're on the fence about, we're going to break down the numbers or Jess is going to break down the numbers for you. A home in Chaffee County is roughly, on average, a median price point is $600,000 right now. So let's use that as a good starting point for buying a $600,000 house versus renting. Buying that now versus renting now and buying later. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, so when we're looking at this, we've got buying a house at $600,000 versus renting. In the first year, you can see that monthly expenses is higher buying versus renting. So roughly looking about $3,400, $3,500 mortgage payment. That's with 20% down on a conventional loan at 6.75%. Renting, the average rent $1,800 to $2,800 is kind of a ballpark. So just put it at $2,300 with $30 a month of maintenance or maybe some renter's insurance, that kind of thing. So you can see initially that it costs a little bit more money, the blue bar being the buying the first year versus renting. But over time, with the national annual rental increase of 8%, that over time, by the 7th year, you'll actually be paying more rent than the mortgage would have been had you started that. So the cash flow difference is about $17,000. However, over the 10 years, your appreciation gain of that home is about $275,000. That's a lot of money over 10 years that you will gain in equity in your house. The other thing that you'll be gaining is the amortization gain. So as home prices or home values increase, then you also are paying down your mortgage. So you're paying down your mortgage as the value of the home is increasing. So that gives you more value. Versus like when you buy a car, you're paying down your car loan as your car is depreciating in value. So typically you want to try and pay your car off for your car's not worth that much. But in a home, you get a different type of value with that. There is a cost to sell. So if you want to unlock that equity value of your house, the commission's generally speaking around 6%, and this report takes that into account, $52,000 to be able to sell your home after 10 years. So that $600,000 home, though, you're looking at about an $874,000 total value of home being able to sell that. If you go ahead and scroll up a little bit, total net gain by buying a home over 10 years is $273,000. Really, like we talked about before, the biggest costs are the upfront costs when you go to buy a home. So you got to have the down payment, you got to be able to pay the closing costs, etc. So that is a little bit more of a lift in the first few years, but after the first few years, you really start to gain a lot of value and unlock equity in your home. So with the total cost of a home, you can see the total value of owning the home with over 10 years, and it's a significant benefit historically to be able to have home ownership to really create some additional income, additional equity, and really set your family up for success, being able to have that value of the home to tap into. So if you decide to wait, and this isn't including the rental side of it. So what we just looked at was rent versus buying, because money is going out the door to rent. Let's say you're living rent-free, or you're living with your parents, or whatever your situation is. So you don't have the rent. If you do have the rent, then there's even a more significant impact for the cost of waiting. But if we look at property value today at $600,000, waiting 6 months, it's just going to increase. And if we wait 3 years, we can see that there's about a $93,000 increase just in the cost of that home. So your loan amount goes up. So even if you're putting 20% down, you have a higher loan amount. It's going to take you longer to pay off that loan. In addition to that, this is even calculating in decreasing interest rates over time. So we won't get too far into it today here, but they keep kind of kicking the can down the road as far as when interest rates are going to come down. Nobody has a crystal ball, but generally speaking, they were saying third quarter of this year, have made it fourth quarter of this year, and now they're talking first quarter of next year. And just recently, the Fed has decided to keep interest rates up and for a longer period of time based on the last Fed minutes. So this may actually stay up longer. But at the end of the day, the point is that even if you wait 3 years to get a 5.75% interest rate, the cost of your home is so much significantly higher. Whereas if you were to purchase at 6.75, you can always refinance at these lower rates and still have this initial upfront value. So we have the appreciation of property over time, so you can see that's going up, and we have the payments over time go up and kind of flatten out, and that's the difference between property value going up and the interest rates coming down. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you're still paying higher monthly costs for waiting. So that graph that we just looked at, this actually shows the numbers. So payment difference for waiting 6 months is only $76, but the property appreciation and amortization loss is just over $17,000. Waiting 3 years, you have a little bit more benefit than waiting 2 years, depending on what mortgage rates do and the appreciation gain of a home. But waiting 3 years, you're losing about $110,000 in equity between property appreciation and amortization loss. So it's a pretty significant amount. If you're able to buy a home and it fits you and your family's needs and all that kind of stuff, really buying sooner than later is the biggest benefit historically over time.
All right, thanks for going over all of those numbers with us. That helps a lot. If you're interested in getting that document specific to you, customized at the price point that you're interested in, we use $600,000 as a starting point, but the number that is in the price point you're looking in, we can customize that and also customize it for national and more regional numbers, right?
Yeah, we can pull in local data, so it's not so general. It's a little bit more specific, so you can really get a good solid idea of what you're dealing with and be able to shape some expectations.
Okay, perfect. So if you want something like that, if you want to really get dialed in on whether or not it makes sense for your financial situation to buy now and see the cost of waiting, please put a comment in the video below, and I'm also going to have contact information for myself and Jess in the video description below, and you can reach out to either one of us with any questions you have. Thank you very much for all of your knowledge, Jess. We appreciate it, and thank you for watching. I'm Monica McCarthy with HomeSmart Preferred Realty, your resource for Chaffee County real estate. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe if you want to continue to get this content. Thank you.